it's hard to recognize my life looking back on it. I'd always thought it would be a normal small-town dream: wife, 2 kids, dog, and a little house. And I was well on my way to securing that little slice of Americana for myself. But despite being the best contractor in the county, the life I'd built came tumbling down one day when I found out what my wife's extra shifts really were. I'd always been proud of my wife long before the pandemic brought everything to a screeching halt. I'd known the work that being in the healthcare field was like running a perpetual gauntlet, one covered in someone else's vomit. Melissa spent long hours taking care of elderly dementia patients in a nursing home as a CNA early in her career, coming home in tears at the state of the facility and the lack of help. Then when she became an RN, she was able to move on to greener pastures. First stop, our local emergency room. Despite her small frame and bubbly demeanor, my wife had always been one hell of a daredevil. She loved the heart-bursting adrenaline of roller coasters, and she drove far faster than even I dared to. That made her a great fit for the ER, where you had to know how to handle your adrenaline and still act. Finally, her career landed her on the nursing career version of free parking. She became a flight nurse. For the first few months, her social media was full of posts showing her next to the helicopter in her full gear, looking tiny next to the man who she said was a pilot. She informed me it got a lot of attention from our friends. Social media was never my thing, so I took her at her word. As for me, I'd never done anything much. Melissa was my greatest accomplishment in life. Just like her, I'd headed off to college just after graduation. Unlike her, I'd been more interested in making things than helping people. A career as an engineer was what I'd been pursuing when I met her. Within 2 months, we were engaged and planning our life together, and my studies simply gave way to her own. Her job saved lives. After all, my career path wasn't anything quite so noble, so I fell back on my high school job, working construction in a business owned by a friend's father. The money wasn't much, but it was enough to keep us alive while Melissa finished her education. Even when she was working while at college, it was a pittance. My paycheck and sweat ensured she ate, got to class, and had a roof over her head. She said one day, through tears, as I surprised her with the money she'd been short to cover her books one semester. I told her, "You will make it through, I promise." Then I kissed her on the forehead. She didn't need to know. I skipped lunch every day for the last 2 months to scrounge the money up. By the time she made it to the big leagues of nursing, life wasn't quite so unsteady. We'd made it through the hard part. Now she was practically raking in the money. For the first time in our lives, it felt like we could relax and enjoy ourselves a little. I started taking more holidays off, hosting more barbecues for our friends, even went to an NFL game once or twice. And her, girls' night out, girls' night in, spa days, she was gorgeous. With as much time and cash as she spent at the salon and the mall, you'd hope so. But why should I care? She was bringing home the dough, and I was reaping the rewards. There was a downside though. I began to feel lonely. With all of her time at work, and all of the time she spent focusing on herself, she had hardly any time left for me. Of course, she deserved pampering. After all of those hours being selfless, helping her patients in every place she worked, but it didn't make the feeling any better. I loved my wife and wanted her desperately every minute of every day. And I couldn't seem to get her to sit still long enough to let me show her how much I adored her. Finally, I knew what needed to be done, knew exactly what would really catch her eye. Being young and paying for our own wedding, a honeymoon hadn't been a possibility. It had saddened Melissa to no end, and no groom likes to see his bride looking down on her wedding day. So, I made a promise to her that one day I'd take her wherever she wanted to go in the entire world. Whatever she wanted, I'd make it happen. And I had always intended to keep that promise. For our 5th anniversary, I kept that promise. I'm not too manly to say the week wasn't magical. Spending 7 days with the most beautiful woman in the world, seeing her body bronze in the sun, and become dewy against the sheets. It's something anyone would be over that, and she was as happy about it as I was. The glow in her eyes told the whole story. It felt like we were brought out of stasis. We'd entered upon saying, "I do," and that we were newlyweds all over again. There was no getting enough of each other. We made love for hours, every night, every day. Even today, I don't think the memory of that vacation will ever leave me. Now, much more bitter than before. It's still something I'd enjoyed so long. I know it would never leave me. When we got home, I carried my wife, still as beautiful as the day I married her, over the threshold. It was the first time I'd felt good enough about myself as a husband to do so. How could things have gone so badly wrong? The first thing that dented this haven we created was while other couples were stuck at home together, whether fighting or, well, I was stuck at home by myself. Melissa seemed to be working constantly. When she came home, she'd have indentures from the PPA on her skin. I tried to kiss her, rub the marks to make the pain from them go away, but she'd usually push me aside. I understood. I really did. She was working an exhausting schedule and trying to fight a battle against an enemy that she couldn't even see. What kind of jackass husband would put sex above something like that? So, I focused my love on being accepting of her and of doing my best to support her in any way I could. She'd come home to a hot meal and a strong drink. No matter what time it was, when she returned, whatever she wanted, I had it before she could get the sentence out. Her feet hurt. No worries, babe. I'll carry you to the tub so you can soak. And I didn't ask anything in return. Showing love to healthcare workers wasn't just a social movement to me. It was something I was throwing myself into with the woman I loved as the recipient. But even as things seemed to be slowing down, she started staying away more and more. I don't want you to catch COVID. She told me one day, after she spent a full week in a hotel room near her workplace, your family's health history isn't great. Your grandma's got emphysema and you're the only one that can go out and about without possibly spreading it. She promised me things will be back to normal and we will possibly go away again. I wouldn't realize until hours later that neither of us had said I love you, not once in the entire conversation. It made me feel like a failure of a husband. After all, she was my wife, my life, and I loved her dearly. But something inside me didn't sit right. That night, I hardly slept, even as I tried to drown that feeling in my gut in cheap beer. Not long after that hit, I got another one. I lost my job. The owner felt horrible as he'd known me since I was a kid. We're letting everyone go for now. He said, everyone but me and the family. It's all I can afford. And I don't know how much longer that'll last. As soon as everything's back to normal, I will hire you again. And if you find some other job in between and you don't want to leave it, you will get no hard feelings from me. If you come back, I'll make it up to you. I'll give you a promotion and a raise. But for now, I gotta let you go. I took my marching papers along with a glowing reference and a promise not to fight unemployment and came home early to an empty house and an absent wife. This was the time when the loneliness was the worst. I called and called, trying to get a hold of her somehow, if for nothing but our budget. She had to know that I'd just lost the only job I'd ever had and the income that had helped her rise to where she was today. The phone would ring and ring and ring, but I never got an answer. I must have texted her dozens of times, nothing, but I assumed she was busy with work and there was nothing more noble than working extra shifts at a hospital during a pandemic. Finally, 2 days after getting the axe, she answered. The sympathy I expected, it was clear I wouldn't find it with her. Why? How could you let this happen? She said, sounding angrier than I'd ever heard her before. She berated me, told me that she had no intention of supporting a spouse who didn't work. It was an ugly side I've never seen of her before. This was North Carolina and we'd both gotten a heaping dose of old-fashioned values just from living in the place, but I'd always thought of her as my partner in life. And my partner had just left me feeling alone, uncared for and disgusted. After that, the next weeks were a blur. I'm not proud to admit that I spent most of the time drunk, doing anything else felt like moving a mountain. I just wanted to wilt, to wallow in the sorrow that my happy life and marriage had become. Melissa and I didn't talk much. I only saw her once a week, sometimes less. We slept together once. She did seem nicer, more caring, even apologizing for her outburst, but that feeling in the pit of my stomach was back and it wasn't leaving. During one of our phone calls when she answered, I could have sworn I heard a man's voice. It was low, a bit gruff, and I couldn't make out what he'd been cut off from saying. The tone though, unmistakable, asking Melissa about it made her laugh. She said, you just heard the TV. I'm catching up on some shows. I haven't had a chance to watch in a while. Then I asked, why did it stop? Because I paused it to talk to you. She stopped for a moment. What are you trying to say? Suddenly feeling foolish, I didn't tell the truth. I brushed the question off and tried to talk to her as though nothing was wrong. Something was wrong though. Very wrong. I'd hear her answer the phone out of breath. It would be because she just hurried back to the hotel to rest her feet. But never again did I hear that voice over the phone, at least. One day when I had run out of beer to drink and pity to consume me, I decided something had to change. I knew my wife was off work. Now COVID be damned. I was going to pick up flowers, put on something that wasn't 3 days worn. And I was going to go see my wife. She'll be so surprised. I thought I had no idea how right that would be and how wrong at the same time. I had always known where she was staying while she didn't like me to visit and had told me of her own accord. I put my foot down. I was going to know where my wife was spending her nights. If only so I know where she was. If something happened, they were across town, close to the hospital she worked out of. It's why she said she had chosen them. At the front desk, I stopped. A woman was working there, red-headed, a bit slim, but with green eyes that struck me for a moment, feeling a moment of disgust with myself. I smiled in a friendly way. It took some smooth talking, but I got a key card for her room. Her booking with my credit card helped with that. That was exactly what I wanted. I didn't want her to have the chance to turn me away. Here I was dressed in my Sunday best and carrying a bouquet of lilies, her favorite flower, and a bottle of rose wine, her favorite drink. I was ready for a special night. I walked into a nightmare. Upon opening the door, I didn't really comprehend what it was at first. The lights were on and I saw the bed unmade. Then I saw skin. Then I saw red. I was stunned, which is lucky, I suppose. Otherwise, I might be in prison now, but it was clear what was happening. My wife, my Melissa, being intimate with another man, I felt ill. I felt something beyond anger. By now she noticed me. She was shrieking, yelling about something, then sobbing. The man was putting clothes on. It was such a blur. Somehow I ended up in the foyer of the hotel, sobbing, heartbroken, and barely conscious with grief over my lost marriage. It was the receptionist that had given me the key that finally helped. A hand was rubbing my back. That contact had more intimacy than anything Melissa had given me in months. My thoughts began to cool. I began to calm down. You seem like a good man, she was saying. You don't deserve someone like her. Don't let her do this to you. It's going to be all right. I asked her what she meant and the truth came out. My wife hadn't been working so many extra shifts. In fact, she'd worked little more than I had. A steady 40-hour work week. All that time, she had been sleeping with other men. The receptionist hadn't kept careful track, but knew it was more than one. I didn't go home. I went to my friend's house, the one whose father had given me my job. He drank with me and let me crash on his couch until I felt like coming home. That took 2 days. There was one stop made between his house and mine. As it turned out, she was there trying to explain, wanting to save our marriage after putting nothing towards it, then shattering it with her infidelity. I didn't want that. How could I? I'd never see her as my Melissa again. She couldn't be my wife anymore. Not after what I'd seen, but I decided to get the truth out of her and I could use this to do it. Tell me, I said, my voice so grave, I could hardly recognize it. Tell me how many, and don't lie and say that was the only one. Eyes watery. She looked down, ashamed, I supposed, at her behavior. Oddly, I found that I didn't care about it. I was completely detached. 3. She told me the whole story, skipping no details. At every point in her career, she found somebody to screw behind my back while I was slaving away in the summer sun. She was studying with the fellow nursing student while in school. She didn't pull extra shifts at the nursing home. A cook there had caught her eye. There was nobody after our trip. She said fervently, nobody, just you until the man she'd been caught with, the pilot she worked with. Of course, suddenly she was wiping her face. Please, please forgive me. I'm so sorry. She repeated in stuttering litany. Look, I got you something. It's tickets for that Hawaii vacation. and I interrupted her. I got you something too. A look of fear came over her face. Melissa didn't answer. The only reply I had was handing out a packet of divorce papers. The divorce wasn't terribly lengthy for about a month or so. It seemed like Melissa was going to push to stay together. I'd heard that her pilot had gotten into trouble with his own wife for sleeping with mine. She decided to stay, but he was to have nothing with Melissa, with the other lovers long in the rear-view mirror that left her alone as I'd been. I wasn't alone anymore. I was living my life and getting on with it. Work hadn't hired me back, but I'd been building my reputation as a contractor. The pay was small as of now, but quickly growing. My buddy didn't mind me staying in his garage apartment until I found something a bit better. Best of all, I'd gotten a pretty redhead's number from the hotel. Her name is Jean. We've had dinner 3 times now. I've never had to call her back more than twice. As for Melissa, there's something we both learned about our state law. When adultery is the cause of the divorce, it can be used to determine certain aspects of the split. Things like alimony. The judge was horrified by Melissa's behavior and took into account everything I'd done to help her in how my now ex had betrayed me. That account turned out to mean a rather hefty sum of alimony every month for a very, very long time. The first night after the divorce was complete, Jean and I made love. After all, I'm not a cheater and she's not looking for any My mother is a very artistic person. She dedicated her life to art. She was a rather eccentric painter. She had the idea of having 4 children and naming us in order to spell out love with our first initials. She passed unexpectedly last year, leaving me and my 2 siblings. She never got to complete the word love. When I was younger, I asked her, what happens if you get too old and can't have a baby anymore, or something along those lines, and she told me that one of us could have a baby and finish it for her. She said it wouldn't be the same, but the tribute would make me happy. My parents had marital problems up till her death because of my father's infidelity. I think she put off having the 4th child for quite some time because of it. However, she always said baby Elise or Amelia would be completing our family soon. I was around 6 to 7 months pregnant when my father and his wife and former mistress announced their pregnancy. She said she would finally bring little Emilio into our family. My sister and I were horrified and spoke to my dad privately that while Mom did want someone to continue on the acronym idea, we found it disrespectful to do it with the woman he was cheating on her with. I told him about how she said she wanted one of us to carry on the name when I was a child. He shut me down saying that she probably expected her and me to still be together and that it'll be better with all you guys in the same generation of the family, and left it at that. My brother agreed. 2 weeks before I gave birth, they found out that they were not having a boy as they had hoped, but a girl. I realized I could take the name Elise before they would have a chance to name their baby my mother's chosen name. They could name her Emily or something else, but it wouldn't be the name my mother chose, and that's what mattered to me, so I did. My father and especially my stepmother are furious at me for ruining my mother's lasting wishes and tarnishing her idea. While my sister agrees with me, she won't say it to my dad since the birth. My aunt and other families on my dad's calling me names from petty and troublemaking to just outright a witch. I didn't expect so much backlash, and it's really stressing me out with just giving birth, and they're taunting me by posting pictures of their ultrasounds with captions like the e-baby is coming and 3 is the crowd, but 4 is love. It's driving me crazy, and it feels like this rift in the family is all for nothing since they're going to claim their baby is the real e-baby anyways. I forgot to add this in. My stepmom approached me and asked me for permission and politely asked me to change my mind about the baby's name once she caught wind that I was already planning on naming the baby Elise. This is part of why I think I could be the idiot. I never actually officially announced the name first. I felt like it would be more special naming the baby when they arrived, not before. Not the idiot. So weird your dad thinks it's even remotely appropriate to name a child of his mistress to honor his late wife. Tell stepmom to pick in our name and honor her own relationship. LOVR because she's the other lover. Burn. Her next kid could be Cecilia, Ursula, Natalie, Tina. I can't understand how the stepmom is going along with it. If I was in that situation and my husband told me he wanted us to name our child after the legacy of his late wife, I'd be a bit shocked even without any cheating. At this point, I would lean into the pettiness since you're already being called out for it and put him and his mistress on blast for the world to see. To take the idea my mother came up with that she wanted her children to carry out, I mean, aren't you tired? You lack such originality. You have to steal from a dead woman. Wasn't sleeping with her husband enough for you? I mean, I can't wait to tell my new half-sibling the origin of her name and about the deceased woman who started the tradition and the mistress who slept with the woman's husband and still wasn't satisfied. That'll burn like napalm. It might burn a bridge as well, though, if that matters at this point. The baby won't be a sibling you grew up with in addition to having no connection to your mother. Your father's trying to use your mother's dream to force you to have a bond with your half-sibling. That likely won't happen because you'll be too focused on raising your own child. Don't let him foist your step-sibling on you to babysit under some guise of developing sibling bonds. Honey, your baby is the real e-baby and always will be. You know that, your sister knows that, and I bet your mom knows that. So, I, 22 female, am the eldest of 6 siblings, 19, teen, young teen, and tween twins. The 19-year-old is at uni in another city some distance away. My parents unexpectedly need to go visit relatives abroad and have asked if I could look after the kids for a week. This is generally fine, except for one day I'm attending a course in another city. I have to leave my parents' house at around 6:40 a.m. and won't return until 7 or 8 p.m. Luckily, my boyfriend, who I live with, is off that day and is happy to help. When I told my mother this, she was incredibly appreciative and I thought nothing more about it. Well, fast forward to today, 2 days before they leave, and my mom asked if my boyfriend's okay with getting up so early to get out of here. We live in the city. Parents are out in the suburbs about an hour by bus. I tell her that that's okay, he'll just come through the night before. To say my mother freaked out is an understatement. Mom, and where exactly will he be sleeping? Me, on the pull-out with me. Mom, absolutely not under my roof. Now to be clear, when my boyfriend and I first started dating, on the couple of occasions we did visit my parents together, we did sleep in separate rooms. However, my parents always said that that was just because they didn't know him. And earlier this year, before we were living together, my entire family rented an Airbnb for a wedding and there were zero issues about my boyfriend sharing with me. Not only was it not a big deal, but my mom specifically made the room arrangements and put us together without any discussions from me. So, I was pretty blindsided by this reaction today. I checked the timetable and he'd need to get the bus just after 5 a.m. to guarantee he'd be there before I had to leave. And presumably, my mother was also expecting him to leave once I returned that night, meaning he'd potentially be getting home around 10 p.m. That's a ridiculously long day and far too big an expectation for someone who's doing you a favor. I advised my mom as such and reminded her about the Airbnb and the fact that we already lived together, and she reiterated that there would be none of that under my roof. For the record, the couch is in the living room, which has no closable doors, just open archways to the hallway in the dining room. As such, there is zero chance that we'll be doing anything scandalous over those 2 nights. I told her this, but she still maintained that it's her house, so her rules. I told her that I felt my terms were more than fair and that if she didn't like them, then she should find someone else for the week and hung up. She's been texting, calling me selfish, and saying how this means she'll need to stay behind and she hopes I'm proud of myself. I made it clear that it really doesn't mean that. There's a pretty easy fix here. Edit. The pullout is my parents' bed. It's in a little recess in the corner. They downsized last year. It's a 2-bedroom, and the other rooms are already crowded with my siblings, and we'd have to sleep on the floor, which I'm also unwilling to do. Not the idiot. My house, my rules isn't a get-out-of-jail-free card for being an idiot. Mom, in this instance, is being an idiot with her idiot rule. Doubly so in light of OP being an adult and doing her a favor. It's even more ridiculous when you consider OP and boyfriend living together. Mom can clutch her pearls to her heart's desire while she looks after her own kids. Mom is free to have rules. However, this is absurd. You're doing them a favor, a pretty big one, in asking your boyfriend to get on a bus at 5 a.m. to look after your siblings is a tall ask. He'll be knackered. It's better for everyone that he gets to stay the night. I also don't quite get your mom's logic. Read the Airbnb. She'll not allow you to share a bed under her own roof, but will happily pay for you to share one so you can attend a wedding. If she's that determined to force two adults to sleep separately, she can likely hire one adult for the week. Stop visiting until your mom respects your relationship. You were right to set that boundary with her. I'm a female 31, have a sister, 25, and we were super close growing up because our parents weren't very active in our lives and put their marriage above us. So, it was just the two of us. At a young age, I had to pick up being her third parent, and it made me resent her for years because she could seemingly have a normal childhood and I didn't. I did get over it though. When I graduated from college, I left my home state and moved to Arizona with my husband, 35. My sister and I barely talked after that because I was busy with my career and marriage. Now, I have a young daughter and I'm currently pregnant with twins. On Wednesday, I received a long text message from my sister and she told me she was getting married and wanted me to walk her down the aisle. I was happy for her until she told me her wedding date. Her wedding is 10 days after my due date. I have no interest in traveling that soon after I give birth, and I definitely have no interest in leaving my husband with 3 kids. I want to get used to being a family of 5 together just like how we got used to being a family of 3 together. So, I told my sister that I couldn't attend because I would only be a week or 2 postpartum and I didn't feel like flying across the country that soon. She tried asking if my husband would watch the kids, but I told her that I'm not leaving my kids that are that young across the country and they're too young to fly on a plane. She got angry with me and told me that she wanted to catch up with me and hadn't seen me in years. So, I replied that we would need to catch up on another day. She ended up hanging up the phone, and now since our conversation, I've been getting emails from her bridesmaids that I intentionally was trying to hurt my sister. I feel like I'm doing the right thing by putting my family and myself above a wedding. So, am I the idiot? Not the idiot. You really didn't have a choice. You physically won't be able to travel. Surely, you understand her request is ludicrous given the circumstances. Resenting her because your parents were bad parents is irrelevant. You literally can't go. You'll be physically recovering from birth and adjusting to life with brand new twins. This seems too cruel to be true. 10 days after birth to leave newborn babies alone is one issue. You, having given birth to twins, be asked to travel 10 days after on a plane multiple hours is another. Your sister still insisting you can do it is unreal. She would have known you were expecting if she'd been active in your life. If you were so important to her to be in the wedding, she would have checked before setting the date. Block the witchy bridesmaids and ignore them. And there's no guarantee on the due date. It's an estimate. OP might give birth mere days before the wedding or might have a C-section that takes a minimum of 4 to 6 weeks to heal from before anything strenuous. And travel is strenuous. It's an absurd expectation. OP best wishes to you and the twins. I, nearly adult, non-binary, live 50-50 with my mom and my dad and stepmom. I recently asked my stepmom to drive me to the drugstore to buy hair dye. I don't have a license. She said yes. And when we got there, I picked out some silver hair dye. She got a sour look on her face and tried to convince me to go with any other color, but I said no because I wanted silver. I asked her why she was so insistent, and she said that silver hair was making fun of older people. She's in her late 40s and has a fair amount of natural gray hair. She said that if I dye my hair silver, she'd take my phone until I dyed it a different color. I told her she couldn't do that because my mom paid for my phone, not her or my dad. She said it doesn't matter because she's my parent and can discipline me however she wants. I said fine, and we left without buying any hair dye. Well, a few days later, I went to my mom's house, and she helped me dye my hair silver anyway. She didn't say anything about it being offensive and even said it looked great. The other day, I returned to my dad's house with my silver hair, and my stepmom freaked out. She did try to take my phone, but my dad stopped her because, surprise, surprise, my mom pays for it, and she can't just take it without talking to my mom. She huffed and called me a disrespectful, spoiled brat, her exact words, because I ran to my mom to avoid the rules. My dad later asked me in private to dye my hair a different color to keep the peace, and he even said he'd pay for the dye if I just would let my stepmom think she won. I said no and threatened to stay with my mom full time if she tried to punish me for my hair. My dad called me stubborn. They're both being cold to me now, and I'm wondering if I'm really being entitled. Am I the idiot? Not the idiot. Stick to your guns. They can make the rules about their house, but not about your body or what you choose to do with it. Sounds like the stepmom is projecting her insecurities about getting older onto you, and dad just wants to keep getting laid. Yep, she's obviously sour grapes about getting older. I vote to stay with your mom full time. Stepmom is on a power trip, and your dad is enabling her. This will keep happening until you leave. Just so you know, my mom, who's 69 and whose hair is 100% naturally light gray, loves this young people dyeing their hair silver trend. It makes her feel proud of her own hair. My 29, best friend 29, is getting married this fall. I'm the best man. We have a bachelor party in Vegas. His fiancée, a bit of a control freak, has badgered me a few times about what we've planned for the trip. To be honest, I don't have many concrete plans in place yet, and I've told her this. After maybe the fourth time she asked, I told her I didn't know the plans yet, and I wouldn't be telling her anyway. She got all huffy and puffy about it, and I basically told her to screw off, and that my job is to throw a fun party for my friend, not to get it approved by her. My friend tells me I should apologize, even though he agrees with me, because it'll stop her from nagging him. I don't want her to keep annoying him, but I also don't want her to think she has a right to do what she's doing. We have other married friends, and none of them said their wives did anything like this. Edit. I'd advise him not to hook up at the club, but if someone else wants it, I won't stop it. I'd 100% keep it a secret. Why would I say something? The plan is to relax and have fun. We don't need a full day of plans done ahead of time. We're just gonna wing most of it. If all he means is apologize for telling her to screw off, then I agree. You could have declined her request in all the ways you described, without going at her like that. This is your friend's fiancé, and your priority in his life will change. You want to be an idiot here, because you're right, but you're going down the wrong path if this is your best friend. Everybody sucks here. She's not asking for a second-by-second itinerary. She wants a general outline of where her fiancé will be while he's away, and what y'all are planning. And there isn't even a reason to believe that she'd object to any of it. She just wants to be aware. Are you required to tell her? Nope. But you're literally part of this woman's wedding party, holding a meaningful place in her wedding. And not only do you clearly hate her, but you're also deliberately antagonizing her, swearing at her, and your examples of why she's so awful just aren't. If they ran into their partner's old friends at a bar, most people would expect to be introduced. It takes half a second, and it's rude not to. For someone who's almost 30, you sound about 16, belligerent, and exhausting. But of course, you are the idiot. I agree. Why don't you have a little empathy for her, even if she's being a bit extra, and just give her a sense of the kind of things you're thinking about doing? This is the woman your friend has chosen to spend the rest of his life with. You need to have respect for her. God forbid she wants to know where you guys will be in case of an emergency. You could have just eased her anxiety. But instead, you're rude as crap to the woman your supposed best friend is marrying. You're the best man. Act like it and have. My 23 male parents, 43 male and 45 female, divorced when I was 8. I stayed with my dad full-time and visited my mom 2 weekends a month. My dad stayed single for all my childhood and adolescence. I met Josh, 34 male, 1.5 years ago because he was my boss at the company I started working half-time for while finishing college, same field. Josh and I started getting along so well and hanging out, I even met his wife, Mary, 30, a couple of times. Well, for my 22nd birthday, I decided to throw a party and invite Josh and Mary to come. My dad was there too, of course, and I introduced them to him. They shook hands, shared some info, and that was it. That was their whole interaction during my birthday party. Like 2 weeks later, Josh came to me saying that my dad was amazing and a fun dude, and then let me know that he and his wife, had some beers with him. From that point, they became best friends. My dad would constantly go to their house on weekends to have some grill or whatever. They also invited me, but I never went. 3 months ago, Josh told me that my dad was an idiot and a homewrecker who seduced his wife to cheat on him and got her pregnant. I called my dad to know what was going on, and he told me that Mary left Josh to be with my dad because they had an affair and she was pregnant, and also told me that they loved each other. I found out that they'd been having an affair for a year almost immediately after they met for the first time. They planned to get married after the twin babies, boy and girl, are born and Mary's divorce is finalized. Not going to lie, I feel guilty because if I hadn't invited Mary and Josh, they would have never met my dad and this wouldn't have happened. But I can't look at my dad the same way I did. He went after a married woman who had a twin son. I know he's a great dad to me and I love him very much, and I know he'll be a great stepdad and dad to these new children, but I just can't look at him the same way I did. So I still talk to him, but I try to keep my distance as much as possible. He invited me to their baby shower, but I said I couldn't go because I didn't feel comfortable. He asked me why, so I said, "Dad, to be honest, I can't look at you the same way. You went after a married woman with a child. You got her pregnant and now want to act as if nothing has happened." He told me this doesn't affect me in any way and that his love life shouldn't be my problem, but I had to quit the job since Josh had become insufferable. My mom and friends say that I should support my dad because I don't know what Josh's and Mary's relationship was like, which is true, I don't, but I can't help but feel guilty and sorry for Josh. Not the idiot. He slept with your boss's wife and you quit your job because your boss blamed you. He can't pull the "it's none of your business" card when he aimed his adultery at your career, the audacity. I hate to break it to you, but great dads don't sleep with the spouse of their child's boss. Great dads don't intentionally nuke a young boy's family. Great dads don't try to rug sweep their own atrocious behavior. Unfortunately, he has not been a great dad as of late. Boy, your mom and her friends are wrong. It doesn't matter what Josh and Mary's marriage was like. What matters is that your dad slept with a married woman, got her pregnant, caused a family to crumble, and screwed you out of a job. It probably would have happened with someone else. Their marriage was not that solid if she was so quickly able to cheat. No one can steal someone else's spouse. A spouse is a person, not an object. They have free will. They're the ones cheating. This Mary is wholly responsible for her own situation. She could have said no at any time. Of course she chose to cheat. But OP's father played the best friend card with OP's boss to get closer to his wife. It is a far more idiotic move, seducing a married woman when you know her husband. Especially when the husband is your son's boss and he's the one who introduced you. I understand why OP has lost respect for his father. If I were in your shoes, I would never have anything to do with my dad again. That is an awkward position to put you in. And it's not fair to you that he used your birthday party to pick up on another man's wife. I have female 32, have a friend who we'll call Ellie, female 32. I've known Ellie since we were around 7. Our mothers are good friends. Ellie has had a very, very privileged life. Her dad is a lawyer, and her mom is a dentist. So, as you can imagine, Ellie had many more luxuries and opportunities than your average person. She grew up attending private schools, having private tutors, going on fancy vacations every year, etc. I won't go into too much detail, but I didn't have a life like Ellie's. Ellie never had to get a job until she went into residency in medical school when she was 26. When we finished high school at 18, Ellie initially went to business school for 2 years before dropping out, then pursuing medical school. Her parents paid her tuition and living expenses, so Ellie never struggled financially and never had to worry about money. Plus, her mother got Ellie volunteering opportunities so she could get references on her medical school applications. Ellie is now a qualified pediatrician. I'm glad she was able to find a career path she enjoys, and I'm proud of her for finishing school. I know medical school is no walk in the park. I'm a veterinarian. A few weeks ago, we went to a town event, and we bumped into some of my old friends from high school. We chatted for a few minutes, and one of them proudly mentioned she had finished nursing school. When we went to my house afterward, Ellie made a very rude comment about my old friend, saying I bet she was just too dumb to go to medical school, and went on about how great she is. I told Ellie that what she said was rude and uncalled for. Ellie said it was the truth. I snapped and told Ellie, "You only became a doctor by getting handouts. You don't get to make comments about other people." Ellie started yelling at me and telling her that I was a jerk for undermining her hard work, and that she still had to work for where she was now. I told her that I knew she still had to work hard, but most people don't have parents who can pay all their tuition and living expenses, and she had it easier. Ellie called me a jerk again and said that I was ignorant and that she still had to work hard. Not the idiot. Many people aren't intelligent enough for medical school, but can only dream of becoming doctors due to classes barriers in place. Many medical schools have rules against students having jobs during their studies. Ellie sounds naive and sheltered. Her comment was insulting and unnecessary. Nurses are essential for medical establishments to function. Ellie's looking down on a profession that medical facilities need to work. She makes doctors look bad. Unfortunately, when it comes to higher education, intelligence and hard work frequently aren't enough. So, her comment isn't even true. Ellie had to work hard at medical school. Ellie did not have to work hard in life. Ain't when people don't acknowledge their privilege. Her comment was very nasty and uncalled for. So, good on you for calling her out. I keep getting into an argument with my wife, and it keeps getting worse. We are due to have our first child, our first together. She has 3 older children that live with us later this month. I bought tickets for a concert approximately 3 weeks after her delivery date, if we make it that far. And she keeps accusing me of not caring for wanting to go to it, saying she can't believe I care more about a concert than our daughter. And how could I want to leave her? I told her that one night out shouldn't be that big of a deal. I'm already using 6 weeks of paid time off I've accumulated at my job to be there when the baby's born, to be around full time. And one night away for a few hours shouldn't be that big of a deal. To be fair, there are also a few football games my family has season tickets to that I said I'd still like to go to, but not all of them. But getting away for a while would probably be good to refocus with the stress of a new baby. In that same vein, I've kept telling her that I can take care of the baby so she can get out from time to time if it's an hour or an afternoon. And before this became a problem, I also bought her tickets for a concert about 2 weeks after the one I'm going to. So about 5 weeks after delivery, where I purchased her sit-down seats to attend because it's one of her favorite artists. I told her I'd take care of the baby for the night and she could go with her mom and enjoy the concert. But instead she says she won't be going because she couldn't leave the baby and doesn't understand how I'm just okay leaving the baby for an evening. Am I an idiot and unreasonable for wanting some planned time away to recoup? Oh dear, are you serious? You are the idiot because your plan for each of you to go to concerts right after your baby is due is dangerous, not just ignorant. You do know that your newborn can't be vaccinated, right? So for the first 2 months, your newborn baby is especially vulnerable. You may not know, but recovering from childbirth takes weeks to months. Childbirth is a major medical event. Do you care about your baby or your wife? Buddy, no. You think you'll need a break 3 weeks after she gives birth, but she doesn't get one? Unless you have support lined up for her while you take the night off. Unquestionably, 100% you are the idiot. She'll need you home. You have no idea what life will be like 3 weeks postpartum. My oldest was still in NICU, which was completely unexpected. I would have divorced my ex-husband sooner if he'd gone away during that time. You're making many plans when you have no idea what your life will look like after the baby's here. I feel so bad for your wife. Paternity and maternity leave is not vacation time. To start with, I worked for a salary as soon as it was legal for me to do so in the UK. I reached a point in my life and career where after bills and savings, I can afford stuff like designer jewelry, bags, shoes, etc. That hasn't always been the case. My family's Asian, and since they got married, my parents have fully supported my dad's family and given financial help to my mom's parents when they needed it. It wasn't unusual for my parents to take me shopping every 3 to 4 months to buy new clothes for my cousins while I got hand-me-downs or second-hand clothes from charity shops and car boot sales. Even when I started earning money, I would have to put it into my parents' account and only get back £10 to £20 a week. Meanwhile, my cousins could ask for new phones, styling products, bikes, etc., and it would be bought for them. So, while as a household, we were probably making enough income to count as middle class, we were ourselves living frugally. This continued well into when I began uni. Around that time, however, my uncle's wife started making comments about my parents paying for their kids' university fees, weddings, and them inheriting the house they lived in, which is jointly owned by my parents and has been willed to me. That was the wake-up call they needed to realize that they were going beyond just helping out their family in need but were actually funding their lifestyle while effectively depriving themselves. After I paid off my student loans and had enough saved for a deposit on a property, I realized I had enough to treat myself, so I started to buy some of the mentioned designer goods. I guess my cousins saw stuff on my IG and started messaging me, along with their mother, to harass me, saying that they had been forced to get jobs while I'm just splashing my cash on things I don't need. I can indeed send them money, but I want to have nice things for myself for once. Does that make me the idiot? Not the idiot. You might want to pass all these messages to your parents, with the caption, "Now they want me to send them all my money too." They are parasites. Tell your cousin you also had to get a job to afford the things you bought. If they want designer crap, they can earn it just like you did. Cut off these leeches. They will not stop drinking your blood on their own. Get your tiny violin and play them the saddest song you know. OP, this is survivor's guilt. You are absolutely not responsible for what money they have available to them. You've done well for yourself through hard work and prudent savings. It would be best if you work through any guilt you might have. Enjoy the life you've made for yourself, and you deserve it, not the moochers. Maybe you should treat your parents to some nice things, since they also didn't get the chance to enjoy luxuries. I'm not saying you have to, but it would be nice, since they were being taken advantage of for so long. No, don't treat your parents to anything. They deprived you, their child, so that your cousins could live it up. Honestly, this is insane. Providing the extended family with brand new clothes, while their kids get secondhand stuff and hand-me-downs. Confiscating that kid's earnings to give to extended family? I'm on board with the notion that family helps family, and that relatives step up to provide a safety net in extraordinary circumstances. However, in this case, OP's relatives don't want a safety net, they want a hammock. My 56th female, youngest son, 30, recently married his wife, 29. We live in different states, and usually only see each other for holidays, etc. Our son's elder brother, 33, was recently diagnosed with autism. While our younger son, and now wife, daughter-in-law were still dating, he brought her home to us so we could meet her. She's always been a little off. She's shy and awkward, and prefers doing stuff on a computer to being outdoors. My husband and I are very outdoorsy, and live a very active life, so I guess we clashed a bit there. She's always been nice, and in the beginning, she participated in many of our activities, even if she wasn't great at them. After his diagnosis, she comforted our elder son, which was a hard blow for all of us. She said she also felt awkward and weird at times, and that it was okay to be different. I suspected maybe she meant this as a way of telling us that she was on the spectrum too. About 2 years ago, they had their first kid. They had some issues conceiving and lost a baby before having their daughter. She's a great kid, and we love her so much. However, since their daughter was born, my daughter-in-law's become even more awkward around us. We invited them over to celebrate the 4th of July. Daughter-in-law was tired and didn't participate in any outdoor activities, but instead insisted on working on the computer, while our son was the one playing with his daughter outdoors. I asked her what was she doing in front of the screen all the time, and she told me she was just catching up on work. This just seemed off to me, because why wouldn't she want to play outside with her husband and kid? So, my husband and I spoke privately about our worries that she's not participating in her daughter's childhood, and leaving it all to her husband. We both agreed that we should talk to her about it. After dinner, yes, drinks were involved. I went away to do the dishes, and heard raised voices. When I returned to the table, daughter-in-law was crying as my husband told her off quite sharply. He said some things that might have been a bit harsh, but nothing untrue. She stormed off crying instead of discussing the issue further. I followed her to try and discuss the situation, and told her we were just worried about her, them as a couple, and their daughter. This was when I told her I thought she should seek help or counseling for autism, as I figured that was why she was struggling with motherhood. She was highly offended, and told me that she was not autistic, but suffering from PPD. They packed their bags and left in a hurry. Later we saw that she had unfriended my husband and me on Facebook, and blocked us from messaging her. They haven't spoken a word to us since. Our son is apparently furious, according to his brother. We can't reach out to explain our side of things now that we're both blocked. Both of us meant well, And it came from a place of worry for our grandchild. Am I the idiot? Let me drop a bug in your ear. This woman finds you and your husband just about as obnoxious as the rest of us on this thread. She forces herself to attend family functions, so her husband can see his parents, and you and your husband can spend time with your grandchild. That's why she gets on her computer and works, to spare herself the unpleasantness of spending time with you. I'll read between the lines. Your husband had a few drinks, and decided to harass your daughter-in-law. You didn't mind because you agreed with what he said. I don't think your son will give your husband another chance to play tipsy narc with her, or you another opportunity to go right behind him, tearing her down some more. Good for them. You are the idiot in every conceivable way. Your son and daughter-in-law have gone no contact. No contact means just that, no contact. You're a busybody, and your husband made your son's wife cry. Actions have consequences. Your actions cut you off from your son and grandchild. How are you surprised that this is the outcome? Good luck with never seeing your Thank you for stopping by the channel. Here are a couple of Reddit cheating stories for your listening pleasure. This is long, but I've been struggling on and off for a month, and anyone who can offer some feedback, my heart goes to you. My wife and I are effectively high school sweethearts from different schools together since 16 together, 20 years married for 12, one daughter trying for our second child. Like a lot of infidelity stories, we were not at our highest emotional peak. When it happened, we spent much of 2021 trying for our second child. The pressures and disappointments of it not happening were hard on both of us, knowing how especially hard it had been on her. I constantly tried to be the, it's okay. Next month, we just try again, person with a brave, optimistic face, which was apparently interpreted as, I didn't care. Sex became so regimented around an ovulation schedule. It sucked a lot of fun out of it. She wanted more spice and felt like her needs weren't getting met in that way. But, on the flip side, I had historically hit a lot of brick walls and no's around creativity. So, I too felt like my own needs were underserved. There were some communication roadblocks around all of it. There were also the all too typical challenges of being new parents with limited childcare outside of when we are both at work, not a lot of us time, which leads to a rut feeling. And the feeling of just being at the job and parent. I should note that one thing that makes all of this so much harder is that I am not the jealous or possessive type. And I mean, at all. In 20 years, I felt like trust and faithfulness was a pillar of our relationship. I was also well aware of feeling like we were in a pressure rut, and I was proactively taking big steps to fix that. I was taking steps as major as completely changing my role at work. So my hours meant I would be home almost nightly. I had to work evenings about 3 times a week, which was getting hard on all of us. After relying on family for most of 3 years, I was seeking a local sitter to make sure we could start to have a regular day night going forward. And I had some spice-up ideas and gifts lined up for that holiday in February. I know there are ups and downs in long-term relationships and that the situation we were in was challenging, but always worth working through. During the fall, she befriended a new male coworker. Like I said, I'm not any jerk jealous and thought nothing of it. A lot of early communication was around sharing he and his wife's own fertility issues with child number 2. As time passed, it seemed like he was mentioned more and more in work stories, even though they definitely don't work directly with one another. But again, not the jealous type. A few months ago, we had another crushing month of not getting pregnant. She was particularly emotional this time around and texted me from work saying she had a coworker, made it sound like a girlfriend, asking to take her out for a drink in response to her hard day and asking, would I be fine if she did that while I had our daughter? Of course, go have fun, get your mind off things, chat with a friend. Hell, I've been trying to convince you to do things like this every once in a while for a long time, but you constantly cite, mom guilt, please go. I am an extremely hands-on dad with caretaking, the kiddo and I have the house held down. Turns out the friend was said coworker. Now I can't stress this enough in 20 years. I don't think I have ever had anything that qualifies as a huge, jealous reaction before she claimed it was platonic, but I was pissed. In retrospect, her failure to mention who the coworker was felt like an intentional omission. She and I rarely had child coverage to have a date night. But in this case, I was used as the childcare to go out for drinks one-on-one with another guy. And in response to her extremely emotional state, I explained that this was a big emotional boundary issue in my eyes. For contrast, I explained that if I had a married female coworker who was feeling emotionally fragile, I would never take her out for drinks one-on-one without knowing her husband personally, or more importantly, knowing it was something he was aware of and comfortable with. She made me sound like I was crazy for thinking it was anything more than just drinks with a friend, but it just didn't pass the straight face test for me. But I quickly gathered myself, talked more rationally about how I felt. She acknowledged that she wasn't thinking about it from my point of view, and we moved on. Fast forward, just under 2 months. It's 6 a.m. and our daughter is always up early. We often alternate getting up with her so the other can get a little bit more sleep. I take her downstairs and we use my wife's work iPad to run the PBS Kids app. I am not a snoop, but as I go to get it set up, I'm taken aback by the iPad home screen being littered with notifications of private chat messages with this employee, talking about coming over to our house at 7 p.m. the previous night, how they have a fun, uncomplicated arrangement that will have to be put on hold in a few weeks. My schedule was changing for the reasons I said before and so forth. I was in a total state of shock when I confronted her. She got a look of dread and shame in the little time we had to communicate quietly as to not alert our daughter. I found out that he had been lying to his own family about going to work for his second job, coming over once a week on nights. I worked late for the last 5 weeks straight with the intention to go 2 more rounds until of course my schedule wasn't as convenient for their arrangement. She tried to plead that she never meant to hurt me or our relationship. And she was 100% committed to us. I have never been more frazzled and feeling like I was spiraling in my life. I send a lot of angry texts, as you can imagine. My coworkers knew I wasn't okay. I played it off. Like I got bad news on the family health front and had to leave. There was no way I could focus. I drove home and tried to convince myself. Things weren't as bad as it seemed. I went to reread the messages to see if I reacted too strongly and wouldn't, the two had a new chat going. It was clear that he was aware I found out, but the conversation didn't seem to, oh no. In fact, it was a bizarre combination of chatty, Kathy friendly. Talk about what they made for food the night before and her inviting him down to her room at lunch to go through her phone, listing her lock screen password and read her private messages. The angry texts, I don't know about any of you, but if you cheated, crap hit the fan and the wound was extremely fresh. Your claim is that you're committed to the relationship. There's something about immediately going to the affair partner and saying, hey, come have lunch with me and go through my phone. Doesn't sit right on the, where's your loyalty front? All the hallmarks of emotional and physical betrayal were there, of course, but there were so many reasons that this was extra bad circumstantially. 1. It was done while we were trying to get pregnant with child. Number 2, after bonding with this person over stories about fertility struggles, that alone is messed up too. There is nothing she cited about where her head was at the time that couldn't also be said about me, but I was working on solutions and an extramarital affair isn't even on the radar. 3, while we struggled to get us time with the toddler at home, I was effectively used as childcare. So she could have that sort of time out with someone else, which was also the night that talk of each of them wanting more in the bedroom heated up for as far as wanting more goals. I already mentioned my plans for helping break out of the rut, but she had put up so many brick walls with me. It was hard to even know what direction to go and forget crazy ideas to spice things up. We're talking things most couples would consider pretty basic. She wouldn't please me orally because it gave her lockjaw, that she could never do a certain position sexually because it hurt, and that her OBGYN has acknowledged that had something to do with her pelvis, that she was long past wearing anything that wasn't comfortable underneath. That she's been extremely self-conscious about her breasts since nursing and always wanted to keep them covered since, and you know what, even if there were things I wanted, I would never push her in any way. She wasn't comfortable, but come to find out everything she ever took off the table for me was apparently on the table for him during the affair, even busted out lingerie she wore on our wedding night that she never wore for me again. In 12 years, we've been together since we were 16 frigging years old. She is the only person I've ever been with. While it's natural for anyone to have passing curiosities in a lifetime, it creates this imbalance when one person acts on them and only one is left faithful for basically life, whether it was stopping the affair to begin with, or taking extremely active steps to improve communication and things with us. None of these were conclusions that happened on their own. This wasn't a, what have I done? This was a mistake and I need to come clean moment. This was over time, methodical and had planned for more, but I got caught. Attempts at improving anything with us in ways she never did before all just feel like concessions. Now, the fallout is a long separate story in itself. I spent 2 weeks sleeping on separate floors. Most nights we had big emotional powwows, sometimes in ways that could have been considered productive, but I have a hard time letting the most hurtful thing someone has done to me be viewed as any sort of positive turning point. I have been trying to give reconciliation a shot, but my feelings about it and what it means for our relationship are all over the map. Before I say too much about it, I could just really use some feedback to anyone who got through all of that. Thanks for listening. Hello, everyone. My marriage story is different than the rest of the stories posted here. It will be a long one as well. Please have a look at it. I am not from the US, but I have been working here in the US since I was 23. And now I am 30 and going to be 31 soon. I am from a developing country and I did both my bachelor's and master's in computer science engineering from an Ivy League school here in the US. So basically, I have been in the US since I was 16. My father is a government employee and my mother is a homemaker. I have an elder sister who is a doctor and she is married and mother of 2 children. Both me and my sister were brilliant academically. She wanted to be a doctor and she is now. I wanted to be an engineer and wanted to pursue my bachelor's in the US. I am currently working in a world-renowned company that we all know. We use the company products every day in all walks of our life. I have an arranged marriage. When I got married, I was 27 and my wife was 21. After completion of my master's and getting the job in my dream company, I moved to a new city. I stayed with 2 of my friends in a shared accommodation for 3 years. Then one of my friends got married. And so we vacated that place and took our own place to rent. I took a 3-bedroom, 4-bath apartment in a posh area in the city, which is 15 minutes away from my office. I met an American man in the new apartment complex and he was my neighbor. He is a car salesman for a high-end car company distributor and was sharing the apartment with 2 guys. He helped me a lot. I mean a lot. I considered him as a close friend. He voluntarily would come to me once a week and will ask me if I need help. I would invite him to both lunch and dinner at my place. Almost every weekend, he would come to my place to watch sports. And we will talk about various topics. Whenever I will go home, my mother will send a lot of gifts for him, and he is always very happy to receive them as well. I never asked him about his personal life neither. He also never asked me anything. Anyway, I got married and of course he was invited. And I booked tickets for him and paid for the visa. He was not able to go because of some work-related thing. My wife came with me after her visa processing. I was very happy. My wife is very beautiful. I am a tall guy, 6 feet 3 inches, and my wife is 5 feet 8 inches. She came from a well-established family and a lovely person. She has a bachelor's degree in history. 7 months back, I was at home working and I heard my wife crying. I walked up to her and asked what happened. She was in the living room, on the couch watching TV. I thought something on TV she saw made her cry. Upon asking, she started bawling and I was clueless. And I was still thinking it's because of the TV, but I was unable to find anything emotional on the TV. She started saying how sorry she was and how she ruined everything. I was still trying to understand what was happening and told her, "Don't worry. We can always fix whatever was ruined. No need to cry. And she looks ugly while crying and she should always smile." The next 6 to 8 hours were hell for me. She told me how 2 years back, for a month, I worked 20 hours every day on a very important project. My friend and my wife went on a sex rampage. Basically, she told me I would leave for the office at 3:45 in the morning, and my friend would come over at 4 and they would do their thing. And he would leave right before I got back, right around midnight. It went on for exactly 1 month and everything stopped after that month. Also, my friend left the apartment complex the next month as well. He rarely speaks to me or responds to my text messages anymore. I will write some more, but later. Thanks for reading. Don't know what I am asking or interested to know. My 23 female dad cheated on his wife with my mom, but they stayed together. My mom died when I was a few months old, and my stepmom didn't want me in her house, so I was raised by my grandparents, who passed away 2 years ago. My dad died before them, so everything was willed to me and my half-brother, 28. I inherited their house, almost everything in it, and all of my grandma's jewelry, which is worth about $750,000. I was also the sole beneficiary of their life insurance, $300,000. My brother got a few heirlooms and some money, but it was far less than what I got because he inherited a lot from our dad, while I pretty much got nothing. At the time, he didn't have a problem with it. He's getting married soon, and I was talking to his fiancée, who told me my brother told her that our grandma wanted his future wife to get married wearing the jewelry she wore at her wedding. I have no idea why he told her this. He was not close to our grandma at all. She definitely did not promise him her wedding jewelry. I was actually planning on wearing it to my wedding and talked to my grandma about that. I told my sister-in-law that I couldn't give her the jewelry. She can borrow it for her wedding, but she has to return it because I plan to wear it to my wedding too. She told me she didn't want her sister-in-law to wear the same jewelry as her. I told her I couldn't give her the jewelry and that if my grandma wanted my brother's wife to have it, she would have willed it to him. I thought that was the end of it, but it was not. My brother called me that night and told me that his fiancée was crying because of me, and he deserved to have something from our grandma because I inherited a lot more than him. I reminded him that I grew up with my grandparents and had a much closer relationship with them. He cussed me out and said I tricked them into leaving me most of their money. That isn't true. They raised me since I was a few months old. I went to a local university instead of my dream school so I could stay home and care for them in their final years so they had a better relationship with me. I told him that his fiancée could borrow the jewelry if she really wanted to wear it to her wedding, but I couldn't give it to her. His mom called me the next day and called me all sorts of nasty things for depriving my brother of something my grandma promised to give him. If my grandma had promised him that, I would have given him the jewelry, but I know she didn't, so I'm not giving it to him. Edit. All the jewelry's insured, except a few small pieces I wear regularly are in a safe deposit box at the bank. The jewelry in question is a necklace and earrings. I might give her something else if they don't shut up. Not the idiot, and at this point, don't even let your fiancé borrow the jewelry because I highly doubt you'd get it back without getting the police involved. Tell her your grandparents wanted you to have it so you'll use it since she doesn't want you both to wear the same jewelry. Inform her that your brother got a lot inherited to him from your father. He can use some of that money to get her a nice set of jewelry. These people plan to keep the jewelry and probably sell it. That's the only thing explaining their responses. Or buy an expensive-looking but fake jewelry set, saying it's from the collection, and let her borrow it. Pretend to have a great fake reservation, then cackle as she flaunts it. She'll probably get it appraised within a month, but she's not planning to return them. Can you imagine how embarrassed and angry she'll be? If she plans to return them, she will never know and will feel beautiful. I do see your point. That would be hilarious. I would laugh even more when she decided to keep it, then laugh so much more when they try to sell it and realize it's fake. And please, don't give them a smaller item if they don't shut up. All that teaches them is that boundary stomping, whining, and sending their flying monkeys at you will at least give them something. That's a dangerous precedent to set with these two. Your stepbrother's very persistent and entitled. Your grandmother wanted you to have it. My teen female mom got pregnant young, and she has me and my brothers, 18 male and nearly adult male. My mom and the person I know as my dad started dating while she was pregnant with me. My whole life I was told he was my father, and his name is on my original birth certificate. My bio mom and dad were unfit parents, and it resulted in us being taken away by CPS. They eventually got their parental rights taken away. We were later adopted by a different family, and they are who we see as our mom and dad. A year ago, we discovered that the man we thought was our bio dad is in fact bio dad to middle brother, and our bio dad is a person we had never met. Our bio dad reached out to us, and while we were hesitant at first, our parents suggested we at least just say hi back. We did, and eventually we ended up meeting bio dad, and later his family. Through this, we learned that bio dad knew that our mom was pregnant, but chose not to be involved, and wanted nothing to do with us, as he wasn't ready to have children. Present day, Bio Dad is married, and he and his wife are struggling to have kids, so after several months of slowly gaining our family's trust, Bio Dad suggested to our parents that they have unofficial custody with him, where we'd spend some weekends, holidays, summers, etc., and such with him and his wife. My parents said that they're not willing to give up weekends and holidays, etc., and don't want to have any unofficial agreement either. This annoyed my bio dad, and he started throwing a dad card around, saying that he's our father, and therefore he has the right to have us around as much as he wants, and that his suggestion was him trying to be reasonable. He then came to us, saying he wanted us to be a family again, and they were keeping us from him, etc., and just trash-talking my parents a lot. I guess he was trying to get us to side with him, but this just made us start to not like him. The next few times we met, he just kept on trash-talking our parents, and I told him that he had multiple chances to be a parent, but chose not to. He doesn't get to be a parent when it's now convenient for him, and had he stepped up earlier, he wouldn't be in this situation. I also said that if he kept trash-talking our parents, we'd stop talking to him. Now we've stopped talking. Our bio dad then took to social media, telling any and everybody that my parents are evil, and keeping him from the only kids he might ever have, and calling us kids brainwashed, dumb, and ungrateful. Since then, we've had his family and friends contact us, saying we should apologize to bio dad, and rethink our decisions. Others blame our parents, saying that one day we'll snap out of our parents' brainwashing, and regret cutting our bio dad off. Some took it even as far as to say we're ungrateful, petty, and all kinds of mean things. Am I the idiot for telling my dad it's his fault he's in this situation? Not the idiot. This is ridiculous. How can a perfect stranger enter your life as a nearly legal adult, and start claiming parental rights? If he cared, he would have been present in your younger years. You and your siblings owe him nothing. As far as you're concerned, he's just a donor. You have actual parents now, even though you're not biologically related. I agree. I'm a parent, and I'm horrified at how bio dad is acting, especially with these horrible social media posts. I've replied to his friends, asking what OP should be grateful for. The fact that our bio dad knew about his children, and abandoned them to CPS, for the first 17 years of their lives, only to show up when they're adults, and expect someone to love him. OP, you're absolutely correct. He had multiple chances to be a parent, and chose not to. He doesn't get to be a parent when it's now convenient for him. If his family and friends keep harassing you, respond with that, and block them. You had a great adoptive mom and dad, who really care about you, and aren't using you to sue the childless wife. I suspect if bio dad's wife has a kid, you'll get dropped again. Never have contact with him again. His behavior is off the rails, mean and ridiculous. Move on with no regrets. I, who 27 female, go out with my sister, Lily, 35, once every 2 or 3 months for lunch. That is both because she has 3 kids, female pretween, male kindergartner, and female toddler, and barely has time, and because I have very few days to myself, thanks to my residency. Throughout this whole lunch, she's complained nonstop about how hard it is to have kids and be a mom for the past few years, nonstop. She talks about kids 100% of the time, and complains. I was extra tired during our last lunch, and I lashed out at her, saying that I don't remember anyone forcing her to have kids, and now that she has them, she should be a big girl and deal with the consequences of her actions and decisions. She got super mad and called me a judgmental idiot who knew nothing about parenthood. I was like, exactly, I'm taking one of the most challenging paths a person can take in my career, and I've never complained, not even a word, because I chose it myself. She told me I was a horrible sister, and an even worse aunt, and she said she wanted nothing to do with an idiot like me. Am I the idiot? Edit. She does have a husband. She's a stay-at-home mom. Her husband has some financial struggles. Other kids were planned, informed choices she made. She's naturally a person who finds things to complain about, even when there genuinely isn't anything that bothers her. Not the idiot. You can only take so much from a person, being so utterly negative like that sucks the life out of folks. The conversation sounds exhausting and one-sided. That being said, she's right about it being hard. I'm not a mom, but from seeing friends and family, it's lonely for them to get screamed at and puked on. It was her choice, as was your choice. neither should be minimalized or marginalized for their challenges. Yeah, I think it's the sucks the life out of folks part. I had a chronically depressed friend that kept getting worse. I would do anything in my power to uplift her when we were together. A few friends even told me she seemed uplifted around me. I truly loved her as a friend. Years went by and she got increasingly negative, and it drained me. I had to give up the relationship. I still miss her, but I just can't do it. Everyone's the idiot here. People complain about the things happening in their lives. You probably complain about things in your life that are stressful. Your sister complains about her kids because they're stressful. It's literally what people do. Telling people they can't complain because they made their choice. So, therefore, they lost the right to complain and it has to be all rainbows and butterflies is absurd. However, you can't ask to change the subject or just sympathize. Also, don't compare your choices with your sister's. You're different people with different goals. Stop competing for whose life is harder. Based on your logic, you chose to have lunch with your sister. So, therefore, you can't complain about that experience. My boyfriend got very skinny in the last few weeks. I feel he lost at least 10 kilograms, 22 pounds. I saw him shirtless yesterday and was kind of shocked at how much weight and muscle he lost. I still think he's beautiful, but I'm worried about his health if it continues like that. Yesterday, I told him that I noticed how much weight he had lost and that he should start eating more before he gets sick. I said it's not a serious tone at all though, just chill. He got kind of offended and told me to mind my own business. He was very dismissive and kind of rolled his eyes at me, which made me sad. I apologized and I told him I was just worried about him. And then he said, "Do you want me to call you a fatty and eat less?" Yeah, don't be annoying. I was so shocked that he'd say something like that. I wasn't trying to be mean at all. I'm still very sad about this and we haven't talked much since then. And I don't get why he even said this because I'm at a normal weight. I'm 5 feet 5 inches and 150 pounds. But his comment made me very self-conscious. His overall behavior has been very dismissive for some time now and I don't know why. But anyways, was I wrong for saying that? Should I apologize again? If his comment made you self-conscious, how do you think he felt when you told him to eat more? Body shaming isn't just when a skinny person makes fun of a bigger person. It's okay for you to point out his weight, but when he suddenly turns the tables, you're the victim? Nah, you're Delulu and you are the idiot. I'm confused. You said he'd lost 10 kilograms, 22 pounds in a few weeks. So something like 4 to 7 pounds a week and he's now skinnier and you went straight to eat more? If this is correct, this is dramatic, rapid weight loss that indicates a serious medical issue. This is, dear, I've noticed that you've lost a lot of weight very quickly. I'm worried something is wrong. Have you checked in with your doctor? Are you feeling okay? Type of weight loss. You are the idiot for how you handled it. His response suggests to me that something is up and he's entirely unaware of it. I hope you guys are able to talk about this productively and that he's okay. When someone loses 10 kilos in weeks, it is a big indicator that something is very wrong in the body. It's not healthy as weight shouldn't just go away like that. It isn't delusional or body shaming to point out a medical emergency to your partner. Screw it if it hurts their little feelings. It's unhealthy and must be pointed out and checked out ASAP. Sudden and unexplained weight loss is a common sign of cancer for a singular example. Would you rather they just ignore that and potentially let it get worse? Absolutely not the idiot. They should go to a medical professional as soon as possible. Hopefully, it's nothing, but something could be very wrong. My ex-husband, Adam, has a brother, Larry. During our marriage, Larry was the nightmare brother-in-law, constantly boundary stomping, picking at people until they got upset, gaslighting them, etc. He grew to dislike me as I was one of the few to call him on his crap and tell him to stop. I kept telling Adam we should go low or no contact, and he refused. Larry then began crap-talking me to everyone. Adam never stood up for me, despite several conversations. Unfortunately, my daughter, then a young teen, now a mid-teen, ended up hearing a lot of it, and it really hurt her as we're close. I did my best to keep my kids from Larry, but Adam continued to bring my kids around them. Due to this and many other factors, we divorced. I tried to fight in court that Adam couldn't bring the kids around Larry and lost. One day, Larry went too far, crap-talking me in front of my daughter, and she went off on him, defending me, and calling him out for his bullying behavior. She later told her dad it was her or Larry, and if he didn't pick her, she'd never go over to his house again. At the time, I had full custody as my kids were old enough to decide who to live with, and they picked me. They eventually compromised that my daughter wouldn't have to be around Larry again, but Adam would continue seeing him on his own. My daughter entered therapy shortly after and didn't see Larry after that. With the help of her therapist, she finally told me that when I wasn't around, Larry would bully her and instigate until she got upset, then her father would ground her or make her apologize. Adam was then asked to join therapy and apologized. Adam and our daughter have since begun seeing a therapist to work on their relationship. Well, Larry died last week of a heart attack. Adam is naturally devastated. The funeral was yesterday. My daughter refused to go. I told my daughter she didn't have to go. My son, a teen, chose to, and I respected that. I did make sure my daughter was positive she didn't want to go, and she stood firm, taking several days to mull it over. We also discussed sometimes we do things we don't want to for those we care about, which also led to a great conversation on boundaries, and I ultimately respected her choice. If it's relevant, the funeral fell on my custody day. Adam's angry at me that I didn't force my daughter to go. I said that given the circumstances, she shouldn't have to go. Several members of Adam's family have reached out and told me that I had enabled my daughter to alienate Adam and Larry from each other and have further allowed her to be disrespectful by allowing her to miss the funeral. Am I the idiot? Not the idiot. Your daughter learned how to stand up for herself. There's zero point in making her go to a funeral to pay her respects to someone who never respected her or you. Good job, Mom. And if Adam doesn't knock it off, I can foresee another funeral your daughter may skip. It sounds like your ex-brother-in-law only abused women and girls, and your ex was okay with that. Hasn't Adam learned anything? Despite all that therapy, etc., your daughter will end up going low or no contact with him and his family, and he'll be crying, wondering why. Honestly, the fact that they're all trying to attack both you and her for her making a choice based on our own needs just shows the very toxic lack of respect for personal boundaries